Penguin Random House Audio presents Un Lun Dun by China Miéville. Read for you by Karen Cass.
In an unremarkable room, in a nondescript building, a man sat working on very nondescript theories. The man was surrounded by bright chemicals in bottles and flasks, charts and gauges, and piles of books like battlements around him. He propped them open on each other. He cross-referred them, seeming to read several at the same time. He pondered, made notes, crossed the notes out, went hunting for facts of history, chemistry, and geography. He was quiet but for the scuttling of his pen and his occasional murmurs of revelation. He was obviously working on something very difficult. From his mutters and the exclamation marks he scrawled, though, he was slowly making progress. The man had travelled a very long way to do the work he was doing. He was so engrossed it took him a long time to notice that the light around him was fading unnaturally fast. Some sort of darkness was closing in on the windows. Some sort of silence. More than the absence of noise, the presence of a predatory quiet was settling around him. The man looked up at last. Slowly he put down his pen and turned around in his chair. "Hello," he said. "Professor? Is that you? Is the minister here?" There was no answer. The light from the corridor still faded. Through the smoked glass of the door, the man could see darkness taking shape. He stood slowly. He sniffed, and his eyes widened. Fingers of smoke were wafting under the door, entering the room. They uncoiled from the crack like feelers. "So," the man whispered, "so it's you." There was no answer, but from beyond the door came a very faint rumble that might just have been laughter. The man swallowed and stepped back, but he set his face. He watched as the smoke came more thickly around the edges of the door, eddying towards him. He reached for his notes. He moved quickly, dragging a chair as quietly as he could into a place below a high ventilation duct. He looked afraid but determined, or determined but afraid. The smoke kept coming. Before he had a chance to climb, there was another rumble laugh noise. The man faced the door. Part 1. Xana and Deba. Chapter 1. The Respectful Fox. There was no doubt about it. There was a fox behind the climbing frame, and it was watching. It is, isn't it? The playground was full of children, their grey uniforms flapping as they ran and kicked balls into makeshift goals. Amid the shouting and the games, a few girls were watching the fox. "It definitely is. It's just watching us," a tall blonde girl said. She could see the animal clearly behind a fringe of grass and thistle. "Why isn't it moving?" She walked slowly towards it. At first the friends had thought the animal was a dog and had started ambling towards it while they chatted. But halfway across the tarmac, they had realised it was a fox. It was a cold, cloudless autumn morning, and the sun was bright. None of them could quite believe what they were seeing. The fox kept standing still as they approached. "I saw one once before," whispered Kath, shifting her bag from shoulder to shoulder. "I was with my dad by the canal. He told me there's loads in London now, but you don't normally see them." "It should be running," said Keisha anxiously. "I'm staying here. That's got teeth." "All the better to eat you with," said Deba. "That was a wolf," said Kath. Kath and Keisha held back. Xana, the blonde girl, slowly approached the fox, with Deba as usual by her side. They got closer, expecting it to arch into one of those beautiful curves of animal panic and duck under the fence. It kept not doing so. The girls had never seen any animal so still. It wasn't that it wasn't moving. It was furiously not moving. By the time they got close to the climbing frame, they were creeping exaggeratedly like cartoon hunters. The fox eyed Xana's outstretched hand politely. Deba frowned. Yeah, it is watching, Deba said, but not us. It's watching you. Xana, she hated her name Susanna, and she hated Sue even more, had moved to the estate about a year ago. On her way to Kilburn Comprehensive on her first day, Deba had made Xana laugh, which not many people could do. Since then, where Xana was, Deba tended to be too. There was something about Xana that drew attention. She was decent to good at things like sports, schoolwork, dancing, whatever, but that wasn't it. She did well enough to do well, but never enough to stand out. She was tall and striking, but she never played that up either. If anything, she seemed to try to stay in the background, but she never quite could. If she hadn't been easy to get on with, that could have caused her trouble. Sometimes even her mates were a little bit wary of Xana, as if they weren't quite sure how to deal with her. Even Deba herself had to admit that Xana could be a bit dreamy. Sometimes she would sort of zone out, staring skywards or losing the thread of what she was saying. Just at that moment, however, she was concentrating hard on what Deba had just said. Xana put her hands on her hips, and even her sudden movement didn't make the fox jump. It's true, said Deba. It hasn't taken its eyes off you. Xana met the fox's gentle vulpine stare. All the girls watching, and the animal, seemed to get lost in something, until their attention was interrupted by the bell for the end of break. The girls looked at each other, blinking. The fox finally moved. Still looking at Xana, it bowed its head. It did it once, then leapt up, and was gone. Deba watched Xana and muttered, "This is just getting weird." Chapter 2. Signs. For the rest of that day, Xana tried to avoid her friends. They eventually caught up with her in the lunch queue, but when she told them to leave her alone, it was in such a nasty voice that they obeyed. "Forget it," said Kath. "She's just rude." "She's mad," said Bex, and they walked away ostentatiously. Only Deba stayed. She didn't try to talk to Xana. Instead, she watched her thoughtfully. That afternoon, she waited for Xana after school. Xana tried to get by in the rush, but Deba wouldn't let her. She crept up on her, then suddenly linked an arm into one of hers. Xana tried to look angry, but it didn't last very long. "Oh, Deebs, what's going on?" she said. They made their way to the estate where they both lived and headed for Deba's house. Her boisterous, talkative family, while sometimes exasperating with all their noise and kerfuffle, were generally a comfortable backdrop for any discussion. As usual, people looked at the girls as they passed. They made a funny pair. Deba was shorter and rounder and messier than her skinny friend. Her long black hair was making its usual break for freedom from her ponytail, in contrast to Xana's tightly slicked-back blondness. Xana was silent while Deba kept asking her if she was okay. "Hello, Miss Reesham. Hello, Miss Moon," sang Deba's father as they entered. "What have you been doing? Cup of tea for you ladies?" "Hi, sweetheart," said Deba's mum. "How was your day?" "Hello, Xana. How you doing?" "Hello, Mr. and Mrs. Reesham," said Xana, smiling with her usual nervous pleasure as Deba's parents beamed at her. "Fine, thank you." "Leave her alone, Dad," said Deba, dragging Xana through to her room. "Except for the tea, please." "So, nothing happened to you today?" said her mother. "You have nothing to report? You had a totally empty day? You amaze me." "It was fine," she said. "It was same as always, innit?" Without getting up, Deba's parents started loudly consoling her about the tragedy of how nothing ever changed for her and every day was the same. Deba rolled her eyes at them and closed her door. They sat without speaking for a while. Deba put on lip gloss. Xana just sat. "What are we going to do, Xana?" said Deba at last. Something's going on. I know, said Zanna.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?